Protect your kids with the COVID vaccine. Up to 1 in 5 new cases have been in kids. They are just as likely to get COVID as adults. Vaccines are safe and specially formulated for children 5 to 11. Questions? Talk to a health worker. We can do this.
What's up, Naki?
What's up, Carl?
It's KOVIKI talk time.
I know, I'm excited.
And Naki and I are gonna learn today. And that's one of the benefits of having a Pacific Islander show, our own show, is we can invite people on and learn. So real quick, if you don't know what KOVIKI Talk is a multi-episode series where we talk about all things COVID-19. So we're timely. When it was time to vote, we talked about voting safely, getting to the polls safely. When it was time to get tested, when it was time for the vaccine, we talked about that. But the most important thing is we have Pacific Islanders on the show to speak to Pacific Islanders. So we don't need our story told or information given to us by non-PIs. We can bring them onto the show and actually have them deliver the message to the community. So today, Naki, we are in Kiribati, and I learned really quickly. That's the first thing that I learned was I was pronouncing it wrong. And I think we'll do the icebreaker second. So, Naki, do you want to introduce our first guest?
Oh, sure, I can do that. I'm so excited. Our first guest is Cassandra Walton. She's an English teacher and owner of Real Stuff Matters Academy, and we'll get into that in a little bit. She is of Kiribati heritage and half Australian. She has over 7 years teaching experience and community work. She has a bachelor's degree in international relations and policy writing, Deakin University. From Deakin University, she also has her master's degree, human rights and international law, woo-woo, national teacher accreditation, Sydney Institute of Higher Education. Hundreds of students taught through 2021. Cassandra just finished doing online English classes in Kiribati, which she has had a blast doing. Welcome, Cassandra.
Thank you, Naki and Carl, and thank you so much for having us on here. I'm really excited.
We're going to have fun tonight. Also with us is Mike Roman, former Kiribati Peace Corps volunteer, Fulbright Fellow, co-creator of the social media platform Humans of Kiribati, received his Ph.D. from the Department of Anthropology at the University of Pittsburgh in 2014. Pittsburgh, I like it. Collaborating with governments, international media, nonprofit organizations, and citizens from around the world. He has spent the last 22 years raising global consciousness of the climate crisis from the front lines and works at the University of Cincinnati. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Kamnaben Maori.
Awesome. And we have our third guest. We didn't get a bio, so we're going to have Rimon. Is it Rimon? Am I pronouncing that right?
It's Rimon. But
Rimon.
That was close.
Rimon. Okay. If you can introduce yourself to the show, and then Naki's I think she may have an icebreaker for us, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, thanks, Carl and Naki, and it's an opportunity and a pleasure to be on the show. I'm Rimon. I'm a public relations specialist for more than a decade. I used to work in public relations organization, public relations. So in the past decade, I used to work with the former government under the leadership of President Tong, and President Another Tong, who's more widely known on his advocacy for climate change. I was his PR back then, and after his tenure finished in government, I crossed over to the other side and became a freelance journalist, or rather an independent journalist operating from home. So that's pretty much me.
Welcome.
Awesome. Okay,
Thanks.
so before we get started, we're just gonna do a quick icebreaker. It'll be real simple. We'll go with Cassandra first. Would you rather meet or travel back in time to meet your ancestor, or to the future to meet your descendants?
Ooh.
Right.
That's a really good question. I think I would like to go back to the past and learn from my ancestors a little bit more, have those conversations, in a setting where we can really learn and, unpack and see how the connections with who I am today has mapped, from their time as well. So that'll be pretty cool.
Awesome. And how about you, Rimon?
Oh, the same question.
Yes,
Yeah.
same.
I think I'm on the same boat with Cassandra here. Kids nowadays they become smart kids. Saying, oh, these old people are old and all that. So I'm in favor of meeting my ancestors. I mean, I've heard a lot of great stories, not witnessed. So it would be a lifetime opportunity to go back and have a chat with them and see how things were done back in the days. So definitely going to the past.
Awesome. Thank you. What about you, Doctor?
I'd have to go to the past as well, but with a condition. I would have to go to the past on my biological side as well as my Kiribati adopted side. I can't leave out half of my family.
Yeah. Awesome. Carl?
I'm going to go with the trend and head to the past. I think that, I'm fascinated with history. So that's a big piece of it. And then if I get to go back, generations ago and talk to and learn from my ancestors, then I can actually help my descendants and give them more information. So I could actually go back, learn some things, and then hopefully pass that knowledge on. But it would be interesting to see, what does 2 or 3 generations from now look like. But yeah, I'm going to go with the trend and go back. How about you, Naki?
Yeah, I always go forward. I want to see what my descendants have, only because of all the work. And I said this before, only because of all the great work that Pacific Islanders are doing. I want to see what our descendants are gaining from it, and what have they learned, and has it gotten better? And are we the majority of the crowd now? It's because now when we go places, when we see each other, we see a Pacific Islander, we're like, because there's so little of us, we're so surprised when we see each other. So I would like to go forward and see, hey, are we the majority of the crowd now? Like, are we it?
I knew Naki was going to look to the future because she's a brand new Nana. So she holds the future every week. She's got the future in her lap.
Yes.
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome.
Yes, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I know. I'm too young to be a grandma. Just say it. It's okay. I tell my son, "Oh, you look like my brother." He's like, "No, Mom, no, don't do it." Hey, I try. But we're so excited to have you guys on because, like I was telling Dr. Mike, I was scrolling through and noticing that this year, the beginning of the year, or late last year, that our islands are starting to get COVID, and I'm starting to see news of us code red, code orange, and so like in 2020 and early 21, we were like tight lockdown, So, well, first let's ask you guys, for those who don't know where Kiribati is, can you explain where you're located in this big, gigantic world? Anybody?
Well,
ladies first.
I'll take that first shot.
Okay.
Kiribati, I didn't know where it was either. I was sent to the Pacific Island nation of Kiribati after telling my Peace Corps recruiter that I hated hot weather, I was allergic to fish, and severely prone to motion sickness, especially on boats. And then they sent me to a Pacific Island nation of all places that had nothing but boats, heat, and fish. Is the best mistake of my life. Or I don't even know if it was a mistake, fate. But Kiribati is located in the middle of the world. It's where the international date line crosses the equator. It's the only country in the world to have territory in all 4 quadrants of the planet. It is the first to see the light of day, week, year, month, millennium, and it is it's Middle Earth. It's Middle Earth.
Well said.
Oh, and also, if you put all of its islands together land-wise, it's only going to fill up maybe a couple of Washington, D.C. city limits. But if you add the oceanic area, it stretches nearly almost the size of the continental United States. So it is a large country. I like to call it a boss country, big ocean sovereign state, not a small island developing state. Not a Sid, but rather a boss. But it is.
Love that.
It's a big ocean state.
Awesome. Cassandra, any facts or information that you want to share as we get started? It's good to kind of level set with everybody so everybody knows what part of Oceania we're talking about and a little bit about the people.
Yeah, I think, for me, being half Kiribati and half Australian, I always tried to explain it in a geographical sense. And I always said that, it's near Hawaii and between Hawaii and Fiji. And everyone would be like, oh, so you're Hawaiian. I'm like, no, I'm not. But, I guess that was the only way that I could really, explain the location of where we were whilst trying to put us on the map. And I believe that, the people there, and also, the culture that we try and maintain here in Melbourne, Australia, we try and live through the cultural experiences by celebrating important milestones, especially our Kiribati independence. It's such a massive celebration that we do every single year. I know that it's, a public holiday over in Kiribati, and even in Melbourne here, we have a community. I'm also the president of our Kiribati Association here in Victoria. So we put a lot of planning and we have a committee team to try and, make sure that we are doing justice by making sure that even though we're from a small island, we're able to celebrate, with the minority in our community here in Melbourne. So yeah, I believe that Kiribati people are usually friendly, largely friendly. They always say that people that go there that aren't Kiribati actually say that, they're always so fun and they always are so relaxed and everything's just, just, hey, it's okay. So I guess that's kind of our personality and our characteristics that we have carried through our ancestors, even through to our time and even through to myself as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Rimon, you are actually there, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, look, for those who don't know where Kiribati is, I mean, it's always been where it has always been. I mean, it's right there in the center of the Pacific, as Mike has said earlier. It is right. It is right. We have the certain, unique things that, a lot of people in the world are starting to know or know about Kiribati, and as Cassandra said, I used to did a lot of, extensive international travel back in the days before the pandemic. And, meeting people on the road, they say, where are you from? I dread those kind of questions because it's not a simple answer like Germany or Fiji, because Fiji is known. So I resort back to Fiji and Hawaii. Those are the ones that are known. Fiji is known more for its Fiji water, and Hawaii for obvious reasons. So we say that if I say, if I'm Hawaii, if it's a long day, I just say I'm from Fiji or Hawaii. They're like, oh, cool, But then, the immigration officers I come across at ports, they see me passport and ask, kind of silly questions. Is this a country? Presenting your passport, and where is this? Do you have a government? Do you have a currency? It's a question based out of ignorance. But I appreciate it, and I think I have a role in informing the people. But I say, look, it's Kiribati, and I think in the past administration, or rather decade, the government has really put Kiribati on the map with respect to its plight on climate change. As Dr. Roman mentioned, the islands are quite very small. You might not understand what smallness is until you really reach Kiribati. When you stand in the middle of the island, and you can see on the other side, the ocean side, and you see on the other side, it's visible. You can actually throw a stone from one end to the other end, is the lagoon. So that's how small we are. And, people starting to know, well, and you talk about Kiribati and they go, "Oh, so you're from that small island that is sinking," and yeah, that's us. But I mean, it's not the best trademark, but at least people know who we are. And then, I mean, we do have a rich culture with, with colonialism and all that, and World War II. And then when people started doing their research, they start to understand and appreciate more of the country.
Yeah, I think the colonialism and the I don't know, um, the tourism, right? So Hawaii is like the beginning point, and that's the same thing. Like Naki and I will do is we'll start. Oh, Samoa is. Well, do you know where Tonga is? No. Do you know where Fiji is? No. Okay, Hawaii. Let's just retrieve. Everybody knows where Hawaii is, and it's south. You know what I mean? But it's I don't know. It's a good thing, I guess, that a lot of people know where Hawaii is. But then it's also it's a little sad that that's where a lot of us end up just punting and saying, okay, Hawaii, and then further out into the ocean is the rest of Oceania. But I think a piece of that has to do with obviously it becoming a state and then being a tourist destination and the colonialism that occurs all over the Pacific. That's probably why Hawaii is well known. Um, so with the COVID, as our topic, I think that, and Naki kind of touched on it earlier, that it seems like to some degree it was a big issue in the mainland and in the rest of the world, big parts of it, but it wasn't like in Samoa and in New Zealand and a lot of the island nations. They didn't have that when the rest of the world was going through it. Now it seems like things are starting to open up. And it's switched to the point now Oceania, the Pacific Islands, are experiencing it, and the rest of some of the other parts of the world are starting to kind of loosen things up. Has it been hard to kind of be on the opposite ends of, the news comes from the United States, it comes from Europe, it comes from, a lot of the things, a lot of the media doesn't necessarily reflect what's going on in Kiribati. Has that been hard to manage? And telling people, yes, there is a problem. We may not have a problem today, but it could show up here. And now people are seeing the easing of restrictions, and some island nations are on the opposite end of that. So, talk a little bit about navigating when media is saying something that's not necessarily going on in your neck of the woods. And I'll go from left to right on my radio dial, and start with the doctor.
For me, the whole reason why I started Humans of Kiribati was actually because of, I don't know if you remember, but Cyclone Pam. A huge cyclone that went to Kiribati and actually hit the island that I worked on, and did a number on it. A couple of southern islands, Tamana, Arare, were hit pretty hard, and no one knew about this in the USA. And I was in the USA when this happened, and it was just like, okay, this is devastating the entire Pacific region. Why is there no news on it in NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, whatever it is, whatever media outlet? Because it's not of a concern. It's not of a concern. And so the whole reason why I started working on building up Humans of Kiribati was to tell the world about this place that I loved and that a lot of people love. And so it's hard being here and being able to see, because I'm hooked into what's happening in Kiribati. But not many people in the world are. So I think Rimon has an opposite view of that, since he's in the nation itself right now, and has been for a relatively long period of time, because I've been locked out for a couple of years now.
And so, what is that like? Did it start from the natural disaster? How did Kiribati get COVID?
There were a couple cases. I think, Raymond, you can back me up if I'm incorrect on this, but there were a couple of cases on ships from merchant ships, merchant sailors, but they never they never got into land. As far as I'm aware, they were treated out in the ocean. So COVID came as close as the ocean, but it didn't come on land. And then January, late January, a plane was hired and brought people in that had COVID. I think 50 plus cases, 54 or something like that, were detected, and then it spread from there. Rimon, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, Mike. Kiribati is a fishing nation, right? The main economy is fisheries, so a lot of fish vessels come to port and do the transshipment and do other stuff. They don't come on shore when the pandemic was here, hit the world. So they had to stay in the shore, and no people or crew were allowed to go on the land. But then we had some of our people working on those ships, and some had completed their time working on the fishing vessels and were due to go over, on the land. So through quarantine and checking with the health officials, they were detected that one of them was detected with a positive case. So that gave sort of like a scare to the people that it's here, it's right on the beach, or it's a matter of time before it comes ashore, But the authorities did a great job in not having the COVID, not having the virus come on shore, and they successfully quarantined those people, and now they're part of the community back in last year. But yeah, it was that one flight that really spoiled everything. It was Christmas, it was New Year. People were excited for the New Year, and not understanding that within January, that same within a few weeks, there was going to be, a flight coming in with around 50 plus passengers that brought COVID into the island. And I mean, people in the island here. I think Kiribati is one of the last countries in the world to get its share of experience of the pandemic, if you know what I mean. Our government locked down the country straight away. I think it was in Feb 2020 or March 2020, when they closed the borders. And, it's been really difficult for those inside the borders wanting to go out, and for those outside of the borders wanting to come back in. And that has been the situation for 2 years. And, the sort of rationale behind that closing down, from the obvious reasons that they don't want the COVID to arrive in the country, is to better prepare the country when that day, finally comes. Because, we tune into the WHO and have expert technical advice coming in, and they say that it's a pandemic now. So if COVID is here to stay with us, we have to find a way how to live with it. So one day we can't keep Kiribati COVID free forever. So that 2 years since 2020, when we closed the border, was basically to prepare the country. And there was some preparation done, but I don't know if it was complacency or incompetency or whatever else. What happened is that a plane came in, and just like that, the cases started coming up and up and up and up, and then deaths started happening. So from my experience is that people in Kiribati, with information available at their fingertips, they were aware that the world is being hit hard by this pandemic, and they were just taking it for granted that their border is closed, and that everything's normal, because things were usually normal back before January, if you know what I mean. I mean, we gathered, as a Pacific culture, we do a lot of gatherings and interactions, social interactions, and all that. Parties, weddings, even celebrations, or small celebrations. The whole village gathers around, But then that plane came in, and then governments had no choice but to enforce a lockdown. And it's change is in itself, it's a pretty hard topic or thing in itself. But to have change overnight, and tell people not to go around and wear masks and do that, it's pretty hard. So it's I mean, now we understand how people feel. In other worlds, we see that have been reported on the international media. Now we understand how they feel because we're going through that same thing, perhaps much later than they did.
I wanted to go back to Cassandra and ask the media question. Did you notice any deficit between what the media was reporting and what was going on in Kiribati, or did they align well the way that they were being reported?
Well, I can only account for, I guess, the media that we have on social media. So social media, reporting networks and Facebook groups and pages. We've got the Pacific Newsroom. Even Humans of Kiribati. They're such reliable, resources and platforms that the everyday commoner can come in and actually just get a quick update about what is actually going on. It's just for me, that's when I acted upon, I guess, finding out about that information. As soon as I saw it on, I guess, on social media, that's when I put up my hand and said, look, I knew that the schools were going into lockdown. There's going to be so many kids that aren't going to be taught, and they're going to be, stuck in their homes. Especially we've got to keep in mind that these aren't just, homes like here in the West, where we have, a nice backyard and, double-story houses and things like that. These are small homes that on an island that, I was just thinking about the kids and things. So I reached out to Humans of Kiribati, Dr. Roman, and, said, hey, I want to help. I want to provide, free classes, free virtual classes. And I took my learnings of teaching in a COVID environment when COVID hit Australia back in 2018. And then I was able to act swiftly with that as soon as they went into lockdown. So I taught classes for just over 2 weeks when that initial lockdown took place to students in their high school years. So for me, I think the media coverage was good and available for those, for people who are potentially interested in Kiribati. You need to, be in the know and actually, be following the news, especially for things like that are happening in Kiribati. And because I am an Kiribati woman, I have a genuine interest there. So whether that goes beyond that would be just a matter of, I guess, hearing about it through the news. I think there was a couple of, moments in the news, but, it's always quick and it's just, a short amount of time that, we do get a voice, but definitely social media is where to go.
Yeah, and it's interesting the role that social media is playing in the world right now. What's going on in Ukraine with Russia, a lot of what's getting reported is coming through social media, and they're trying to control that narrative in Russia. So you have that, the social media. Like, I don't want to get all my news from Facebook, and I'm not going to get it all from the news feed. But if things are being shut down and they're trying to be controlled, it's nice to have that outlet. So it's interesting to see in today's world. You get news on Twitter like immediately. Sometimes even before it breaks, you'll find out on Twitter that there's something going on. So it's interesting to see social media play a role in that, and that would make sense. In smaller communities, we're not going to be represented in the mainstream media narrative, right? They're not going to report on a nation that has 40 versus a nation that has 40,000. We're going to hear the big numbers. So I'm glad to hear that.
I know that one of the reasons why a lot of islands shut down is because we can't handle it. If we had a huge breakout, like in Samoa, they had the measles epidemic, and unfortunately, a lot of children, passed because of that. Can Kiribati handle there is a huge breakout, but how are they handling, the patients that are getting COVID? If they have severe symptoms, are they able to handle the numbers that are flowing through there?
Well, if we look at the numbers, I think there's 12 now that have passed away from COVID. There's roughly these are reported numbers by the president's office or by the Ministry of Health. There's almost 3,000 cases, and I would say 2,200 or 2,300 have recovered officially by those stats, as they're calling it. You gotta think too, when this came to Kiribati, it was not a Delta outbreak. It was not an original strand outbreak. It was the Omicron outbreak that was happening in Fiji. And so that plays a lot into the severity of the cases. And then the knowledge. I mean, Kiribati had a 2-year running start, head start. They knew what to do, or they had knowledge of what was needed. And well, people did not want to wear them. I mean, it's 90 plus degrees, you know. You don't want to wear a mask, but there was evidence and there was proof. And one thing that I noticed, there was not anti-vaxxers, there were not anti-maskers, there were not um, rumors or things spreading. Stuff did get posted to social media, but that stuff was immediately taken down to stop anything that could possibly get worse. As far as if they're prepared, I know the WHO, like Raymond, you're there. You could speak to this way better than I could, but UNICEF was there, WHO was there. I mean, there's a lot of outside support. There was an Australian team that went in not too long ago. I think there may have been more than one Australian team. Rimon works as for the Kiribati newsroom, so he is definitely the one to ask on this.
Yeah, in addition to what Mike said, and I guess within the context of what the question that Naki posed, I think it's really hard for Pacific governments or specifically talking about Kiribati government to handle this kind of situation. These are my opinions, right? I'm sure the government would say they are on top of things, but this is what I observe. I mean, this is COVID is quite different. The governance or the rules around COVID really goes against how we are as a people in Kiribati, if you know what I mean. As a culture, we interact, and the rules set out by COVID, 2 meters distance, you have to wear a mask, and all these. And how are you going to tell the whole population to do that and have full cooperation in just overnight? It's hard. There are those who, and then there are those in the population who think they know better and this and that, and they don't want to follow this. But it's a monumental task for especially a Pacific government to really enforce these kind of measures. I think when the deaths started happening, as Dr. Roman mentioned, we are lucky this is Omicron, not the Delta variant. So people got sick, and the numbers reported, I believe, were not accurate because of the lack of testing kits. So the numbers that were reported or what you see in the media that were out are just those numbers that those people who had the opportunity to be tested. But the remainder of the population, never had that opportunity, and everyone was getting sick. People in Kiribati generally live in an extended family, meaning if I live my wife and kids and my parents and my in-laws and we live under one roof. So if one of them gets sick, you can imagine how can you quarantine that person, right? So and Omicron being very very spreading very fast, we don't stand a chance. So I think within January and within 2 weeks actually of the COVID coming in, the numbers were just slowly coming up between 60, and the next day it's coming up to 70, and then 90, 100. But what we're seeing on the ground is that people are getting sick more and more. The clinics in villages are beginning to feel the stress of people coming in for Panadol and asking for those things to help them better, make them better. So there was a shortage of medicine and all that. So we had that sort of understanding that within one household, at least 50% of the people there have had COVID. So that's something that while the government continues to do its testing, and Australia and other countries helping us with supplies and testing kits, the numbers are now in 3,000. Even the deaths are at 12. But what I hear on the ground is that most of the deaths that happen in the past week, I make it a habit to ask in a polite way to the families and say, what's the cause of death? It's almost has always been it's almost has always been answered or verified by the health, but most of these people have underlying conditions, and Kiribati, like any Pacific Island country, is NCDs is very prevalent here and has so diabetes and hypertension, high blood pressure, and all this liver and kidney thing going on. So once they hit with the COVID, daunting challenge for the government to really do this.
So it's safe to say that. Oh, I think we're gonna lose him. But I think that it's Dr. Do you think it's safe to say that because the numbers are probably higher than what is being reported because not everyone is able to get a test or be tested, and sometimes we have our pride, so we don't want people in our business. I mean, I know here is Pacific Islanders, the rate is high, the number is high because we live in multi-generational homes. We have underlining diseases, diabetes, like you said, high blood pressure. So for our community to get COVID is higher than the rest of the communities. Would you say that the numbers are higher than what is being reported because of what Rimon said?
Well, yeah, definitely, because number one, all of our islands are spread out, like as I said, across an area almost the size of the continental United States. And when there's an outbreak in the main island of Tarawa, Tarawa is where the majority of the population lives. So when we have an outbreak in Tarawa, we had to stop flights, outer island flights. So we don't know if there's stuff happening on this island or this island or this island, if there's no test or no medical, facilities being relegated to those places. So yeah.
So I wanted to
go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to ask Cassandra about because how do we deal with COVID in our everyday lives, right? So like taking classes, teaching classes, those kind of things. Talk a little bit about the English classes that you just completed and what effect COVID had on the teaching/learning experience.
Yeah, so I think it provided an opportunity for, I guess, as a learning opportunity or as a case study for maybe the other islands that are starting to go into lockdown, who are experiencing lockdown, such as Solomon Islands and and what have you, in what capabilities that they do have with technology. So just because classrooms has shut down, schools are closed. I remember with even here in Australia, in the first couple of weeks, parents, children, it was so overwhelming just to even understand what online learning was, and sometimes it worked for some kids and it worked for some people, but majority of, I guess, the people or even the students here in Victoria, here in Australia, kind of struggled. But as time got moved on, a lot of online education actually became a normality. It became a way of being able to have more time in your day. Parents weren't driving across town to drop their kids to private tutoring after school and then to soccer practice and rugby training and things like that. So it became kind of, I guess, an opportunity to learn in the comfort of your home, whilst being able to still be able to be equipped with the knowledge and the lesson and, I guess, the objectives in the class. So having that experience prior to working in Kiribati online virtually, I felt like I was there teaching the students. Like we had, within the first couple of days, we had almost 45 students, in my classes, and we, worked with the knowledge on the ground, the local knowledge, in terms of what time of the day of actually having and running these virtual classes. So, Dr. Roman gave me really great insight. He said, Cass, you got to do it early in the morning. The whole island is asleep and the internet connection is really good. The bandwidth will be great. So little things like that, you wouldn't pick, right? You would think, okay, let's do this at 1 o'clock, or let's do a class when I'm free. Instead, I had to get a little bit uncomfortable, and because of the time difference, I was waking up at 5:30 a.m. every day, which kind of mapped, the time with my son waking up. So I'm a mum as well. So I, wanted to do it in a time that suited both of us, and a way that I was able to be consistent in the delivery of my classes. So having said that, you wouldn't think that kids would be waking up at that time, but they were waking up at 7 a.m. local time over there, to jump on in my classes to learn English. And that for me was that for them more importantly was a great opportunity to keep them motivated. I even structured the learning topics around, self-motivation, making sure that they would, even though they're in this situation in lockdown, to not allow, I guess, any strains of mental health to impose on their, their journey with learning. Some of the students that I was teaching, were working on pathways to get into university. So, you got to maintain that high level of motivation, as well as, making sure that they don't drop the ball because they're in a situation such as a lockdown and stuck at home, but to give them something that will keep them stimulated, will keep them, I guess, wanting more and doing something even though they're in such a restricted new environment.
I love the entrepreneurial, innovative side of us that finds ways to make things happen. Early on, Naki and I were going to drive-by graduations where we were driving past houses so that we could find some way to celebrate the graduates achieving what we would normally do and go and bring leis and celebrate them. We found ways to do that. So talking about the educational experience just reminds me how innovative we are as a people, that we're going to find ways to celebrate our culture, to celebrate, to continue doing those things. So the educational process, that was kind of what I was hoping that I was going to hear, is like, we just figured out it's going to have to be early in the morning because the bandwidth, everybody's asleep. We'll get the kids before you lose them to screens locking up and those kind of things, because it's hard enough keeping their attention anyway.
If I just might add, and also, Dr. Roman also told me that everyone has a phone, has a smartphone, on the islands. Like everyone has Facebook, TikTok, like they're all watching videos. Because I was worried, I was like, I don't want to, teach students who don't have access to a laptop or a computer. And he's like, Cass, everyone has a smartphone. They can use their phone. And they did. And it just goes to show how, like, us as Ikiribati people, what we do with what we have. We're so used to not, just using what we have, especially on a tiny island like Kiribati. Like, we only have a little bit of resources, but the amount of things that they can create and produce from such a finite amount of resources is just incredible. you know, and I think, you know, we use the term entrepreneurial, but it's just, I guess that's just who we are. It's embedded in our DNA, and that's how we have, you know, stood against the test of time with all these disasters. It's like, I guess, life-changing moments and things like that, war and stuff. So I think that's where this kind of kicked in, and everyone was just quick to jump on board with it as well.
Yeah, that's the you know, the spirit of our people. Is there anything that was what was inspiring for me, is to see that and see like the stories you're talking about? Rimon, is there anything that you saw that you've seen so far through the pandemic that's inspired you, like those kind of things where you see people winning anyway? I think he's locked up, so we'll go to the doctor. Dr. Roman, has there been inspiring pieces that you've seen through the pandemic, where you've seen, you know, things that our people are doing, or adversity that they're overcoming and finding ways through it? Are there pieces of that? Because it just seems like the more we talk to people, the more we find things of like, wow, that's amazing, that's innovative, that's, you know, that's our people finding ways to win.
So while the students were learning and writing and describing what it was like to be in lockdown, the dads with abs were doing sit-ups and workouts and getting pumped, you know, and nay mom, the women's, they were doing, what is that jazzercise? No, not jazzercise. Zumba. They were doing Zumba. They were doing it. So I mean, yes, things needed to change, but I had an extra Zoom line that I wasn't using, and I gave people the password, and they were coming up with their own ideas. We had a judo Olympian in Japan
Wow.
wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning to teach judo to kids.
That's so
That's
awesome.
so awesome.
So awesome.
I'm working with the U.S. Embassy right now. We're going to put together a Fulbright night and other U.S. opportunities for students in the Possibility Network to apply to. One student just messaged me right now from Kiribati that wants to apply to a graduate program at University of Hawaii, the East-West Center. So, I mean, things come up. The ocean swells, but the canoe sails right through. When there's a will, there's a way.
That's right. Rimon, is there anything that you've seen during this pandemic that has inspired you, or you're like, wow, that's crazy that this has happened? Can you hear Rimon?
He might still be. I'm surprised actually that we got as good of a connection as we did. Yeah. So every minute that we've had with him, and hopefully he comes back on. You know,
Can I just add one more thing that I'm really inspired by? There is this initiative for COVID-19 families. The Secretary of Education and a few other people got together, and they said, we need to help the families. We need to help the students, the children of these families that we're all, you know, the buses are stopping work. The stores, you know, people aren't working, just like all around the world, people didn't work. And over, I want to say $16,000 was raised for this initiative. And every day they made bags of food, portions of rice, tins, biscuits, you name it. And they just took those and gave them out to the community. And it really spoke to what Kiribati is to me.
That's so awesome.
People matter more than profit.
Definitely. Yes.
Those are always inspiring stories. Like Naki really took the the earthquake and the tsunami in Tonga. She took it personally, and she was getting trucks loaded. She was getting companies to donate pallets of water and supplies. And it's just, you know, to see what individuals can do, and when we put our minds to it, whether, you know, it's I don't know how much stuff she got sent over to Tonga, but it was a collective. It was people that were, buying things and donating and putting things together because, and the amazing thing is there's a lot of things going on with Pacifica people where it's not necessarily like Naki's not Tongan, right? But it's somebody it's a community in the Pacific that needs help. So you see the rallying behind in these trying times, and I think that those are, living in multi-generational homes, having underlying health conditions, all these things that the people in the Pacific have to overcome, and then to see the innovation and the community rallying together to put things together and do things for our people. That's those are the pieces. The spirit has really been inspiring the whole way through, and hearing you each talk about what the things you're involved with. We pretty much knew. We didn't know exactly what we were going to hear, but this is what we hear when we talk to everybody in the Pacific, is just the community, the culture, the rallying together, the figuring out a way to do it. That's a common thread that rolls through the Pacific as we have different groups on. That's always there. It's not something we come away from and go, well, we didn't hear about the community rallying together. We didn't hear about people taking care of each other. We always hear it. Sorry, Naki, I was stepping on you.
Oh, no, that's okay. I think it's just because we're island people. We're from the Pacific. Our culture is in us. If one of our islands are hurting, no matter what island you come from, we all get together and try to help. I think that's just how we are. And, I'm going to get all teary-eyed. So when I seen the numbers from Kiribati getting higher and higher, it really pulled at me, because I'm like, this is our people. How do we get them help? How do we get this information out so that the rest of the world can see we're over here? Come look at us, know that we're here. So it's really the reason why I wanted to have you three on, is to show the world that, we're here. We're, we may be tiny, but we're mighty. And so just to people can understand that there's more than just Hawaii. There's more than just Samoa and this Pacific island, there's more than just that. I wanted to ask Rimon real quick if he can hear me. Call me dingy or whatever, but is there vaccination there at Kiribati? Can everyone? I mean, if there is there a high rate of people that are vaccinated?
First of all, there is vaccination. And we have two types of vaccinations available now at the moment. We have that Oxford AstraZeneca, and then we have Sinopharm. So that has been in rollout now since the past year. The latest statistics, the official statistics coming out from government or from the authorities who have the data, says that the first dose is up about to 95%. This is the statistics coming out in December. None has come out after that. I mean, I've asked for the updated data, and perhaps it's coming on the way. But and about 50%, or just over 51% with the second dose. So it clearly shows that we were not ready with the COVID opening of the border, but there was vaccination in here.
Awesome, thank you. That's good to know, because I know that there's in India, here in the United States, a lot of people don't want the vaccine, where countries like India are begging for the vaccine. So I just wasn't sure which islands had it available to them. So that's good news. Really, that's good news. You've been doing a lot of reporting on Kiribati, Rimon. What is your latest project that you're working on from there?
With regards to COVID, or the topic?
Yeah, just in general, because I know that you're reporting. And is that all that you're reporting on right now? Is that your focus, or?
Yeah, well, people need to be informed. There's quite a small media landscape in Kiribati, and there's one particular media in Kiribati is a government media, meaning it's just one side of the story, if you know what I mean, from a journalist perspective. So that's really how I came about to opening up. So as Cassandra mentioned, there's this Pacific newsroom, which are kind of, they are Facebook groups actually. They're run by journalists in the region, who do work for mainstream media, but do this on the side because in the Pacific you can't really, or especially in Kiribati, you can't really tell people, hey, go to this blah blah blah.com and check for the news. They don't do that. The most convenient and easiest way to convenient way to reach them is through social media or Facebook. Am I still on or being?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Right. Yeah. So sorry, the internet's not at its best today. But anyway, that's how I came about to creating this Kiribati newsroom, which solely just pumps out Kiribati information that needs to be heard. I'm a journalist myself, so I work with as a freelance journalist. I work mainly with regional and international media to provide stories.
And he does an amazing job.
Yeah, we've been stalking his articles.
Good.
Yeah, we've been stalking him. So yes, is there? And then we're getting close to the hour, and time has gone so fast. Is there any last, I don't know, anything you would like for us to know before we let you go? We'll start with Dr. Roman.
Well, first off, thank you so much for doing a show on Kiribati. Uncle Carl, Auntie Naki, thank you so much. I want the world to know about this amazing, amazing country. I feel like the USA is a first world country, so we say through economic definitions, but Kiribati to me is a first world country in terms of life, in terms of there are no elderly homes, there are no retirement centers, you don't put your parents away.
Right.
There's no hunger in Kiribati, there's no homelessness in Kiribati. If you have a family, you have a home. If you're hungry, you have the ocean. It's just so different than here, and I wish that the USA could learn a little bit more about not only the country but the people and the culture, because I think USA could be a whole lot kinder and a whole lot better if we just paid attention to them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cassandra.
Yeah, I also want to, I stand in agreement with, Dr. Roman, and I just want to say thank you to both of you, Naki and Carl, just for the opportunity. I started Real Stuff Matters Academy, almost 4 years ago to help Pacifica and Māori people. Being, a woman from a Pacifica background, even though, yes, I represent Kiribati, but majority of my students here in Australia were all from Tonga, Samoa, Auckland, New Zealand, migrating over to Melbourne. And the whole goal of this was to bring education to Pacifica parents who, sometimes fall into the category of low social economic status and not having access or understanding, or just a barrier in language. So coming from a cultural and linguistic diverse background, I saw how my mum struggled with, knowing what, extracurricular activities were available in schools. And Real Stuff Matters was all about just bridging that gap, providing resources, information, working with parents, providing, I guess, an easy to understand way on how to help your child through schooling. And it's just been, incredible in the last year where we're able to even further help a lot of students over in the Pacific, especially in Kiribati. and I've started teaching in the Solomon Islands. So I can only see this only just moving on and creating more opportunities in Oceania, but also being able to serve the Pacifica community here in Australia as well, you know, and teaching them in a way that they understand, you know, through a talanoa, like through a way that we're able just to, you know, just have a conversation and not be so overwhelmed with, you know, the imatang or the balangi trying to teach them in a way that they don't understand. So that's the goal that I had always had for Real Stuff Matters. And that's why, you know, I started this, and just even a platform like KOVIKI Talk was just an amazing opportunity, because that's what we stand for. That's what Real Stuff Matters is, to be able to spread the word, to be able to let other Pacifica parents know that, hey, there are services coming. There are services out there that can help you with your child's learning, and how to make that, I guess, a more easier process for your child as well. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We just so appreciate your time. We thank you for coming on and talking about Kiribati and educating a lot of Pacific Islanders who may or may not have heard of Kiribati. Like, you know, I'm learning every day, and I'm just touched by the information that you're sharing, Dr. Roman and Cassandra, that what you're doing to help the kids in Oceania. It really, really, and I'm a crybaby because I get moved by the work that our community is doing. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing to move us all forward. I always say this is a great time to be a Pacific Islander, because now you're seeing what we look like. And because of social media, people know what Pacifica people look like. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, we only talk to busy people, right? So anybody we have on here, we know that it's the minutes are precious and you're carving them out to spend time with us. So we definitely appreciate the time. And, you know, hopefully we can come back and talk about big wins in Kiribati. And maybe it doesn't even have to be KOVIKI talk. We can talk about something else. But thank you for educating us, spending the time with us, because like I said, everybody who's on is on because they're busy people, and we appreciate you.
Yes. So thank you so much. We're here every other Monday at 5 p.m. So we will see you soon. Thank you.